Mrs. Claver, I think, was up first, and then I'll get to you, Doctor.
Actually, this relates to what you were just talking about. Am I correct in your earlier answer and from what you've said now that your delay in signing the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty is to use this as a sort of bargaining tool with the Soviets and to show solidarity with Czechoslovakia?
My purpose in delaying the signing of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, of course, is that the Soviet Union, at the present time, having just violated not only the treaty it had with Czechoslovakia, but the whole sense of treaties generally, and the UN Charter, which has some language with regard to violating the borders of other countries. Having done all that, for the United States then to precipitously put its arms around the Soviet Union in signing a nuclear non-proliferation pact, I think would be widely misunderstood, not just in Czechoslovakia, but I've gotten reports also, and the news reports bear that, but in all of Western Europe. I think that what we've got to make clear to the Soviet is that we will engage in negotiations. We're glad to agree whenever their interests and ours are reciprocal. But on the other hand, we are not going to ignore on their part a complete breach of a treaty and then sign one with them. They have to indicate to a certain extent that they believe in treaties, that they will, if they have one with us, that they're going to carry it out. That's my attitude toward it, and I think that they will understand that much more effectively. I think former Prime Minister Eden put it very well when he said that we learned in the 30s that when you ignore such gross breaches of international agreements and simply go on as if they hadn't happened, that you pay a very great price for it.
Mr. Nixon.
Mr. Nixon, today much attention, encouragement, and support are given to the indigent, the defectives, and the rehabilitation of the criminals. Now, middle-class people who represent hardworking, responsible, law-abiding, productive people appear to be forgotten, and they are bearing the heaviest burdens in supporting this sector. Now, if you became president, what attention, encouragement, and support would you give this middle class? After all, they are being suppressed by inflation and high taxes.
Well, first, let me say that there are a lot of forgotten people in the United States today, and I would suggest that those who are not breaking the law, those who do pay taxes, those who do go to work, those who do support their churches and their schools, and who believe in this country, and that includes black Americans, white Americans, the great majority of Americans, I think are entitled to an accounting as to why we cannot have the first civil right of all Americans, the right to be free from domestic violence in this country, protected, as to why it is not possible for us, at least if we do work and save money, that when we retire, as Mrs. Hall indicated in her question, when we retire 5 or 10 years or 15 years later, that money that we saved is going to be worth what it cost us to earn it, rather than having the government break faith with us. All that I can say on that score is that I believe that a president must represent all the people. I believe he's got to make it clear that you don't have to break the law in order to get some attention from the federal government, for example. I think we have to have, on the part of the president, incidentally, I make one thing very clear, I don't believe in this dividing Americans, middle class against poor class and indigent and the rest. I think we've got to think more in terms of the interests of the whole country, and I think if we do that, we'll have a much better government. Yes, sir. We have one more for him.
It's short, very short.
Mr. Monroe will give you the last question.
Mr. Nixon, you mentioned a few minutes ago about letting Ambassador Ball practice law in New York. If you was elected president of the United States, what do you intend to let Senator Thurman practice?
Well, I suppose that when you mentioned Senator Thurman, that I could, of course, suggest that both of our parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, has its northern and southern representatives. I just noticed a picture the other day of Hubert Humphrey with his arm around Mr. Maddox in Georgia. And I suppose that Mr. Maddox's views on civil rights are as different from Hubert Humphrey's as Senator Thurman's are from mine. let me make one thing very clear. As Senator Thurman pointed out on Meet the Press about 4 weeks ago, he completely disagrees with my views on civil rights. I've always supported civil rights legislation, as you know. I will continue to in the future. He also pointed out that his choice for vice president was Ronald Reagan, and his second choice was Senator Tower. It was not Governor Agnew. I was the one that made the final choice in the vice presidency. I should also say that I believe that in both of our major parties, there should be room for individuals who disagree. I am glad that I've been able to bring together in our party where we will have dissent, where we'll have disagreement, and I'm going to have to make final decisions. We have Governor Rockefeller, and we have Governor Romney. We've got some of the great leaders in what we call the progressive or liberal wing of the party. We also have Senator Tower, Senator Thurman. In the final analysis, however, one man's got to make that decision. And when it comes to the basic issues, the President of the United States will make them. What I want to do is to get the input from the whole country. I don't want to divide this country north versus south, black versus white, liberal versus conservative. Let's get everybody in talking, and then we can get, I think, a better representation of what people are really feeling in this country and where we ought to go.
I'd like to thank all of you on the panel for your very interesting and provocative questions. Mr. Nixon, we have time for just one short question, if I might ask it. I was going to ask you one short question. As an old football coach, occasionally we'd be ahead at halftime, and I'd go in there wondering, how about that complacency factor? All of the polls, the consensus, you're ahead. What do you feel about that?
Let me make one thing very clear. I watched your teams. I've seen them play in the Orange Bowl. And you always, you were a great third quarter team. Not the first half, but the third quarter. And by the time you got through the third quarter, the fourth quarter didn't matter. I've seen them many times. Now we're just entering the third quarter of this campaign. And I'm going to remember what you did. We're going to roll it up now. And as far as complacency is concerned, people say, well, it's going to be like Dewey in 1948. Somebody has said that Humphrey's going to come back like Truman did. And, well, I just don't believe it because, matter of fact, I think it's a lot of things are different. I think it's one thing to give him hell, it's something else to give him Humphrey.